It was one of those perfect spring afternoons that made life feel just a little bit easier. The sun hung lazily in the sky, casting golden rays over the small neighborhood park. Birds chirped cheerfully in the trees, and a light breeze carried the scent of fresh grass. Sarah Thompson sat on a wooden bench, her eyes glued to her 18-month-old daughter Lily, who was giggling uncontrollably as she swung back and forth on the baby swing. Lily was the center of Sarah's world. Her curly, blonde hair bounced with every movement and her bright blue eyes sparkled with joy. Watching her laugh like this brought a sense of calm to Sarah's otherwise busy life. Between juggling work, household chores, and caring for Lily, moments like these were rare treasures. She wanted to soak up every second of it. The park wasn't crowded that day. A few kids played tag near the jungle gym, while an older couple strolled hand in hand along the walking path. Everything seemed peaceful, almost too good to be true. But there was someone else at the park who stood out, not because they were enjoying themselves, but because they always seemed to bring tension wherever they went. That person was Karen Wilson, the self-appointed queen of the homeowners association, HOA. Karen had earned herself a reputation in the neighborhood. To some, she was a stickler for rules, a woman who would march up to your door if your lawn decorations didn't meet HOA standards or send passive-aggressive emails about parking violations. To others, she was simply unbearable, a nosy neighbor who meddled in everyone's business. Her name alone could spark groans at community meetings. Yet, despite her abrasive personality, no one really expected her to cause any real trouble. Until today. Sarah noticed Karen sitting on another bench across the playground, pretending to read a book, but glancing up frequently. At first, Sarah thought nothing of it. Maybe Karen was just keeping an eye on things, doing her usual policing routine. But then she realized Karen wasn't looking at the other families or scanning the area for rule breakers. No. Her gaze kept drifting back to Lily. Every time Sarah looked over, Karen was staring directly at her daughter. At first, Sarah tried to brush it off. People often complimented Lily on how adorable she was, so perhaps Karen was just admiring her cuteness. Still, something about the way Karen watched them felt off. It wasn't admiration. It was more intense, almost obsessive. Sarah shifted uncomfortably on the bench, wondering if she should pack up and leave. But before she could act, Karen suddenly stood up and walked toward them. "Hi there," Karen said with a wide smile as she approached. Her voice dripped with sweetness, but it came across as forced, like she was trying too hard to sound friendly. "What a darling little girl you have here," Sarah nodded politely, though her instincts told her to keep her distance. "Thank you," she replied cautiously. She tightened her grip on the swing chains, not wanting Karen to get too close to Lily. But Karen didn't seem to notice, or care. Without waiting for an invitation, she crouched down beside Lily and started talking to her in a high-pitched baby voice. "Aren't you just the sweetest thing? Look at those chubby cheeks." Then, without asking permission, Karen reached out and touched Lily's arm, stroking it gently. Sarah froze. This was crossing a line. "Excuse me," she said firmly, stepping between Karen and Lily. "I think we're okay here." Karen blinked, clearly surprised by Sarah's tone. For a moment, she looked like she might argue, but instead, she straightened up and took a step back. "Of course," she said, smoothly, though her lips pressed into a thin line. "Just admiring your beautiful child. You must be so proud." Sarah forced a tight smile. "Thanks. We're good now." She turned her attention back to Lily, hoping Karen would take the hint and leave. But instead, Karen lingered nearby, hovering awkwardly as if she couldn't tear herself away. Every few minutes, Sarah would catch her watching them again, her expression unreadable. Was it curiosity? Envy? Something darker? As the minutes ticked by, Sarah grew increasingly uneasy. She debated packing up and heading home early, but Lily was having such a wonderful time. Leaving now would only ruin the afternoon, and besides, why should she let Karen ruin it? This was supposed to be their special time together, free from stress and worry. Little did Sarah know this seemingly ordinary trip to the park was about to take a turn she could never have imagined. Behind Karen's polite facade lay a storm of emotions and intentions that would soon explode into chaos, threatening everything Sarah held dear. And when the dust settled, nothing would ever be the same again. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Karen's presence loomed like a shadow over what had started as such a peaceful afternoon. She tried to focus on Lily, who was now toddling around the sandbox with a plastic shovel in hand, completely oblivious to the tension brewing nearby. But every time Sarah glanced up, Karen was still there, leaning casually against a tree or pretending to scroll through her phone, yet always within earshot. Karen's behavior became harder to ignore. At one point, Lily tripped while chasing a fluttering butterfly and landed softly on the grass. Before Sarah could even react, Karen rushed over, kneeling beside the toddler with an exaggerated gasp. "Oh no, sweetie. Are you okay?" she cooed, brushing dirt off Lily's hands and knees. Sarah hurried to intervene, scooping Lily into her arms. "She's fine," Sarah said sharply, giving Karen a pointed look. "I've got this." Karen didn't budge immediately. Instead, she smiled warmly at Lily, ignoring Sarah's irritation. "You're such a brave little girl," she murmured, reaching out to pat Lily's head. "Just like my own daughter." "Used to be." The comment caught Sarah off guard. "Your daughter?" she asked cautiously, trying to piece together why Karen kept inserting herself into their lives. Karen hesitated for a fraction of a second, then nodded. "Yes, I had a child once, a beautiful baby girl, but, well, let's just say life took her away from me." Her voice softened, tinged with sadness, or perhaps it was meant to sound that way. Either way, it felt manipulative, like she was fishing for sympathy. Sarah shifted uncomfortably, holding Lily closer. "That must have been hard," she replied diplomatically, hoping to end the conversation. "But we're good here. Thanks for checking on her." Karen finally stepped back, though her eyes never left Lily. As Sarah turned away, she felt a chill run down her spine. There was something unsettling about the way Karen looked at her daughter, not with curiosity or admiration, but with an intensity that bordered on possessiveness. It made Sarah want to leave right then and there, but Lily was happily digging in the sand again, humming a tune under her breath. How could she ruin this moment for her? Despite her growing unease, Sarah decided to stay a little longer. Maybe Karen would lose interest and go bother someone else. After all, the park wasn't exactly short on people today. Surely she'd find someone new to scrutinize or scold for breaking some obscure HOA rule. But Karen didn't leave. If anything, she grew bolder. A few minutes later, Sarah saw her crouching near the sandbox, offering Lily a shiny red balloon she'd pulled from her bag. "Look what I found," Karen exclaimed brightly. "Do you want it?" Lily's eyes lit up at the sight of the balloon, and she reached out eagerly. Sarah intervened before things could escalate further. "Thank you, but she doesn't need anything," Sarah said firmly, pulling Lily back toward her. "We're good." Karen stood up slowly, her smile faltering slightly. "Of course," she said, though her tone carried an edge Sarah hadn't noticed before. "Just thought she might enjoy it." She tucked the balloon back into her bag, but her gaze lingered on Lily a moment too long. By now, Sarah's patience was wearing thin. She glanced around, wondering if anyone else had noticed how strange Karen was acting. A young mother sitting nearby caught her eye and gave her a sympathetic nod, as if silently acknowledging the awkward situation. Still, no one stepped in. Everyone seemed content to mind their own business, leaving Sarah to handle Karen alone. The minutes dragged on. Sarah began mentally rehearsing excuses to leave early. She checked her watch, calculating how much longer they needed to stay before cutting the outing short. Just as she was about to announce to Lily that it was time to pack up, disaster struck. Lily, distracted by the colorful balloons tied to a nearby stroller, wandered a few steps away from Sarah. It happened so quickly that Sarah barely registered it until she heard Karen's voice behind her. "Oh, isn't she adventurous?" Karen chuckled, already moving toward Lily. "No, wait!" Sarah called out, scrambling to her feet. But Karen was faster. In the blink of an eye, she had scooped Lily into her arms, cradling her like she belonged to her. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "Put her down!" she demanded, rushing over. "What are you doing?" Karen didn't comply. Instead, she held Lily close, stroking her hair as though she were comforting her. "Shh. It's okay, sweetheart," Karen whispered softly, ignoring Sarah entirely. "Mommy's here." The words hit Sarah like a punch to the gut. "What did you just say?" she hissed, panic rising in her chest. "She's my daughter. Give her back." For the first time since arriving at the park, Karen's mask of politeness slipped. Her expression hardened, and her grip on Lily tightened. "No," she said firmly, meeting Sarah's gaze with unnerving confidence. "This is my child. You don't understand. I've been searching for her for years." Sarah stared at her, speechless. The absurdity of the claim left her momentarily stunned. How could Karen possibly think Lily was hers? They weren't even remotely alike. Lily had curly blonde hair and blue eyes, while Karen's dark features bore no resemblance whatsoever. And yet Karen spoke with such conviction, as if she truly believed her own lies. "Are you insane?" Sarah finally managed to sputter. "That's my daughter. Everyone here knows her. Let her go." Karen ignored her protests, turning her attention back to Lily. "Don't listen to her, sweetheart," she crooned, rocking the confused toddler gently. "You're safe with me now." Panic surged through Sarah's veins. She lunged forward, desperate to grab Lily, but Karen sidestepped her easily. Without another word, Karen marched briskly toward the parking lot, clutching Lily tightly against her chest. Sarah followed, shouting for help, but Karen didn't slow down. By the time they reached the parking lot, Karen had already unlocked her SUV and was bundling Lily inside. "No!" Sarah screamed, pounding on the car window as Karen slammed the door shut. Tears streamed down her face as she watched her terrified daughter cry and reach for her through the glass. "Give her back. She's mine." Karen rolled down the window, just enough to speak. Her voice was eerily calm, almost detached. "I'm sorry, Sarah," she said, her tone devoid of remorse. "But this is where she belongs. With me." And with that, Karen started the engine and sped off, leaving Sarah standing in the parking lot, shattered and helpless. The world around her blurred as shock and fear consumed her. This couldn't be happening. Not to her, not to Lily. But deep down, Sarah knew one thing for certain. She wouldn't stop until her daughter was safely back in her arms. The screech of Karen's tires echoed through the parking lot as her SUV sped away, leaving Sarah frozen in disbelief. Her heart pounded so loudly she could barely hear her own thoughts. The image of Lily crying inside that car replayed over and over in her mind like a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. For a moment, Sarah stood rooted to the spot, her legs refusing to move, her breath caught somewhere between panic and rage. "Karen!" she screamed after the retreating vehicle, her voice cracking with desperation. "Stop. That's my baby." But the SUV was already out of sight, disappearing around the corner as if it had never been there at all. The only evidence left behind was the faint smell of burnt rubber and the deafening silence that followed. Sarah's hands trembled as she fumbled for her phone. She dialed 911, her fingers shaking so badly she nearly dropped it twice. When the operator answered, Sarah struggled to form coherent sentences. "My daughter. Someone took her. Please, you have to help me," she gasped, tears streaming down her face. The operator's calm voice instructed her to take deep breaths and explain what happened, but every second felt like an eternity. Time seemed to stretch cruelly, each tick of the clock amplifying Sarah's terror. As she spoke to the operator, other park-goers began to gather around, drawn by the commotion. Some had seen parts of the confrontation, while others were just arriving on the scene. A young mother holding her own toddler approached cautiously, her expression a mix of concern and horror. "What happened?" she asked gently. "Is everything okay?" Sarah shook her head, unable to speak. Instead, she pointed toward the empty space where Karen's car had been moments earlier. "That woman, she took my daughter." Sarah choked, out finally, her voice breaking. She said, she said Lily was hers. Gasps rippled through the crowd. People exchanged shocked glances, their faces pale with disbelief. One man stepped forward, his brow furrowed. Are you talking about Karen Wilson, from the HOA? He asked incredulously. She lives 2 blocks away. What would she want with your kid? I don't know, Sarah cried, frustration bubbling over. But she drove off with her. We need to find her before. Her voice trailed off, unwilling to finish the thought. Before what? Before something terrible happened? Before Lily realized how scared she must be, trapped in a car with a stranger who claimed to be her mother. The young mother who had first approached placed a comforting hand on Sarah's shoulder. We'll help you, she promised firmly. Let's spread the word. Someone might have seen which way she went. Within minutes, the small group sprang into action. Parents grabbed their phones to call friends and neighbors while others jogged toward nearby streets, hoping to catch a glimpse of Karen's SUV. Someone even suggested setting up a neighborhood alert system using social media, spreading the news far beyond the confines of the park. Word traveled fast in tight-knit communities like this one, and soon dozens of people were on high alert, keeping an eye out for any sign of the missing child. Meanwhile, Sarah paced back and forth, clutching her phone like a lifeline. Every ringtone or notification made her jump, her hopes rising and falling with each false lead. Officers arrived within 10 minutes, their flashing lights casting eerie shadows across the parking lot. 2 detectives introduced themselves, Detective Martinez and Detective Lewis, and immediately got to work gathering details. They asked Sarah questions about Karen, about Lily, about anything that might give them a clue as to why this had happened. She kept saying Lily was her daughter. Sarah explained, her voice trembling. But that's impossible. I've raised her since the day she was born. Everyone knows us. We're regulars here at the park. Ask anyone. Martinez nodded sympathetically, jotting notes onto a small pad. We'll look into it, he assured her. Do you have recent photos of your daughter? Anything that can help us identify her quickly? Sarah nodded frantically, pulling up pictures on her phone. There were dozens. Lily blowing out candles. On her birthday cake. Lily giggling in the bathtub. Lily asleep in her crib. Each photo felt like both a blessing and a curse, a reminder of the happy life they'd shared, but also a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding now. Lewis turned to the growing crowd of concerned neighbors. Did anyone see which direction the vehicle headed? He asked, raising his voice slightly to be heard over the murmurs. Several people pointed east, toward the highway. Others mentioned seeing a red SUV matching Karen's description speeding down a side street. Every detail mattered, no matter how small. As the investigation unfolded, Sarah found herself bombarded with conflicting emotions. Relief washed over her, knowing that so many people cared enough to help, yet fear gnawed at her insides. What if they didn't find Lily in time? What if Karen hurt her? Or worse, what if Karen believed her own lies so deeply that she refused to let Lily go, no matter what? Her thoughts spiraled until Detective Martinez gently interrupted. Ms. Thompson, he said, placing a reassuring hand on her arm. We're doing everything we can, but I need you to stay strong for your daughter. Can you tell me more about Karen? Has she ever acted strangely toward you or Lily before today? Sarah hesitated, trying to recall any warning signs she might have missed. She's always been intense, Sarah admitted slowly. You know how some people call her HOA Karen? She's obsessed with rules and control, but I never imagined she'd do something like this. She paused, swallowing hard. Today, though, there was something different about her. The way she looked at Lily, it wasn't normal. It was like she wanted her. Martinez exchanged a glance with Lewis, who nodded gravely. We'll look into her background, Lewis said. If she's done anything suspicious before, we'll find it. While the detectives worked, Sarah's phone buzzed incessantly with updates from neighbors and friends. Someone spotted a red SUV parked outside a convenience store miles away. Another claimed to have seen Karen walking briskly along a trail near the river. None of the leads panned out, but each one reignited Sarah's flickering hope, however briefly. Hours passed, and darkness began to fall. The once bustling park grew eerily quiet, save for the occasional chirp of crickets and distant hum of traffic. Exhaustion weighed heavily on Sarah, but she refused to leave, clinging to the belief that Lily would come back to her. Detectives assured her they were doing everything possible, but the waiting was excruciating. Every unanswered question loomed larger than the last. Where was Karen taking Lily? Why did she think she had the right to claim someone else's child? And most importantly, when, if ever, would this nightmare end? Finally, just as despair threatened to consume her, Detective Martinez returned with a glimmer of good news. "We located Karen's vehicle," he announced, his tone cautious but hopeful. "It's parked outside her house. Officers are en route to secure the scene. Stay here. We'll let you know as soon as we have more information." Sarah clutched her chest, relief mingling with renewed anxiety. This was it, the moment that would determine whether she'd see Lily again tonight. As she waited for the next update, she whispered a silent prayer, vowing to fight tooth and nail to bring her daughter home no matter what it took. The news that Karen's SUV had been located outside her house sent a wave of mixed emotions coursing through Sarah. Relief washed over her at the thought that Lily might finally be found, but it was quickly overshadowed by fear. Fear of what state she'd find her daughter in, fear of how far Karen would go to keep her twisted fantasy alive, and fear of the confrontation that lay ahead. Her mind raced with questions. Was Lily safe? Had Karen hurt her? And if they did manage to rescue Lily, how would this ordeal affect her innocent little girl? Detectives Martinez and Lewis briefed Sarah before heading to Karen's home. They explained that officers were already securing the perimeter and preparing to enter the house safely. "We'll do everything we can to ensure your daughter is brought back to you unharmed," Detective Martinez assured her, his voice steady but kind. "But I need you to stay here for now. It's safer for both you and Lily." Sarah nodded reluctantly, though every fiber of her being screamed to rush to Karen's house and demand her daughter back. She clenched her fists tightly, nails digging into her palms as she fought to hold herself together. The waiting felt unbearable, a slow torture where every second stretched into an eternity. Around her, the once bustling park had grown eerily quiet, save for the occasional murmur from neighbors who lingered nearby, offering support. As the detectives sped off toward Karen's residence, Sarah sat on the same wooden bench where she'd spent such a peaceful afternoon just hours earlier. Now it felt like a cruel joke, a reminder of how quickly happiness could shatter into chaos. A few concerned neighbors remained close by, their faces etched with worry. One woman handed Sarah a bottle of water while another offered to sit beside her in silence. Their kindness helped, but nothing could dull the ache in Sarah's chest or silence the endless loop of worst-case scenarios playing in her mind. Meanwhile, at Karen's house, officers approached cautiously. The modest suburban home looked ordinary. Enough: neatly trimmed hedges, flower pots lining the porch, and a welcome mat that seemed almost mocking under the circumstances. But inside, tensions were high. Through a window, officers spotted movement, Karen pacing back and forth in the living room, holding Lily tightly in her arms. The toddler appeared visibly upset, squirming and crying as Karen whispered frantically into her ear. "Karen Wilson." An officer called out firmly, knocking on the door. "This is the police. Open up." For a moment, there was no response. Then, slowly, the front door creaked open just wide enough for Karen to peer out. Her eyes darted nervously between the officers, and she clutched Lily even closer, shielding her from view. "What do you want?" Karen snapped, her voice sharp and defensive. "Can't you see I'm busy with my daughter?" Officer Lewis stepped forward, speaking calmly but firmly. "Ma'am, we need to talk about the child you have with you. We've received reports that she belongs to someone else." Karen's face hardened instantly. "That's not true," she spat, tightening her grip on Lily. "She's mine, my baby. You don't understand. I've waited years for this. Years." The officers exchanged wary glances. This wasn't going to be easy. Karen's behavior suggested she wasn't operating rationally, and the last thing they wanted was to escalate the situation further. Detective Martinez took a step closer, keeping his tone measured. Karen, we're not accusing you of anything yet, but we need to confirm some details to make sure everyone is safe. Can we come in and discuss this? No, Karen shouted, panic rising in her voice. You're trying to take her away from me again, just like last time. Her words caught the officers off guard. Last time? Detective Lewis asked gently. When was that, Karen? Tears welled up in Karen's eyes, and for a brief moment her facade cracked. She hesitated, glancing down at Lily, who was whimpering softly in her arms. They said I wasn't fit to be a mother, Karen muttered, bitterly. They lied. I was a good mother. I loved her more than anything, but they took her away. The officers listened carefully, piecing together fragments of Karen's story. It became clear that this wasn't just about Lily. It was about unresolved pain from Karen's past. Whatever trauma she'd experienced had festered over the years, twisting her perception of reality until she convinced herself that reclaiming a child, even someone else's, was her only path to redemption. Detective. Martinez tried again, his voice softer this time. Karen, I understand you've been through a lot, but this little girl has a family who loves her very much, her real family. If you let us help, we can figure out a way to make things right. Karen shook her head violently, tears streaming down her face. No, she's mine now. Don't you see? She looks just like my daughter did when she was small. Same hair, same eyes. Her voice trailed off as she stared at Lily, her expression wavering between desperation and delusion. At this point, the officers knew they needed to act swiftly. While Karen was distracted, one of them signaled for backup to prepare for a potential intervention. Another officer attempted to reason with Karen, buying time to de-escalate the situation without putting Lily in harm's way. Back at the park, Sarah paced anxiously, unable to sit still any longer. Every ring of her phone made her heart leap, hoping for news about Lily. Finally, Detective Martinez called. His voice was calm but urgent. Ms. Thompson, we've located your daughter. She's safe, but we're working on getting her out of the house. Karen is uncooperative. We may need your assistance shortly. Sarah's knees nearly buckled with relief. Safe. Lily was safe. What do you need me to do? She asked, clutching the phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. We're arranging a DNA test to prove parentage, Martinez explained. It's standard procedure in cases like this. Once we have confirmation, we'll use it to negotiate with Karen. In the meantime, try to stay calm. We'll bring Lily back to you as soon as possible. Though the wait continued, knowing Lily was physically unharmed gave Sarah a sliver of hope. She leaned against the bench, taking deep breaths to steady herself. Neighbors gathered around, offering words of encouragement. Someone brought her a cup of tea, while another hugged her tightly. Their support reminded her she wasn't alone, that an entire community stood behind her, ready to fight for justice. At Karen's house, the standoff dragged on. Officers worked tirelessly to convince Karen to release Lily willingly, emphasizing that cooperation would lead to a better outcome. Eventually, after hours of negotiation, Karen relented, but only partially. She agreed to allow Lily to stay with Child Protective Services temporarily while the investigation unfolded, insisting she'd provide evidence proving her claim to the child. Detectives collected documents and photographs from Karen's home, including old family pictures and custody papers related to her biological children. These items painted a clearer picture of Karen's motivations, a deep-seated longing for redemption, and a distorted belief that claiming Lily would somehow heal the wounds of her past. When Lily was finally escorted out of the house and placed into the care of CPS workers, Sarah received the call she'd been praying for. We're bringing her to you now, Detective Martinez said. Stay strong, Ms. Thompson, you're almost there. As Sarah waited for her daughter's return, she couldn't stop the tears streaming down her face. This nightmare was far from over. The legal battle loomed ahead, and Karen's erratic behavior raised concerns about what might happen next. But for now, all that mattered was holding Lily close and never letting her go again. The moment Lily was placed into Sarah's arms felt like a dream, a surreal, overwhelming blend of relief and heartbreak. The little girl clung to her mother, sobbing uncontrollably, her tiny body trembling as if she'd been through a storm. Sarah held her tightly, rocking her back and forth, whispering soothing words that barely registered above the chaos in her own mind. "It's okay, baby," she murmured over and over, tears streaming down her face. "Mommy's here now. You're safe." For those first few minutes, nothing else mattered. Not the detective standing nearby, not the neighbors who had gathered to offer support, and certainly not Karen Wilson. All that existed was this fragile cocoon of love between mother and daughter, a bond so strong it had survived being torn apart, even if only briefly. But as the initial wave of emotion subsided, reality began to creep back in. This wasn't over yet. Detective Martinez approached Sarah cautiously, giving her space while Lily calmed down. "Ms. Thompson," he said gently, "we've arranged for Lily to stay with you tonight under protective custody until we can confirm everything legally. However, there are still steps we need to take to ensure her safety moving forward." Sarah nodded numbly, her arms still wrapped protectively around Lily. What happens next?" she asked, her voice hoarse from crying. "We'll conduct a DNA test to establish parentage without question," Martinez explained. "It's standard procedure in cases like this, especially given Karen's insistence that Lily is hers. Once we have the results, we'll use them to resolve the situation definitively." A fresh surge of anxiety washed over Sarah. A DNA test? It sounded clinical, impersonal, like reducing the most sacred connection in her life to a series of numbers on a piece of paper. But she understood why it was necessary. If Karen refused to let go of her delusions, proving their biological relationship was the only way to shut her down completely. "Okay," Sarah whispered, steeling herself. "Whatever it takes." Martinez gave her a sympathetic nod. "We'll make sure the process is as smooth as possible. In the meantime, try to keep things calm for Lily. She's been through a lot today." As the officers prepared to leave, Sarah noticed one of them carrying a folder filled with documents and photographs taken from Karen's home. Curiosity gnawed at her. What could possibly drive someone to commit such an act? What kind of pain or obsession fueled Karen's actions? Though she didn't want to dwell on it, understanding Karen's motives might help Sarah come to terms with what had happened. Later that evening, Detective Lewis stopped by Sarah's house to update her on their findings. He sat across from her at the kitchen table, his expression somber but professional. "We've reviewed some of the materials we collected from Karen's home," he began. "They shed light on her mental state and motivations, though none of it excuses what she did." Sarah listened intently, clutching a mug of tea with both hands. "What did you find?" Lewis opened the folder and pulled out a stack of old photographs. "These pictures show Karen with her biological children when they were young. From what we've learned, she lost custody of them years ago due to neglect. There was a custody battle and the court ruled against her. Since then, she hasn't seen them." Sarah frowned, her heart softening slightly despite herself. Losing a child, even under those circumstances, must have been devastating. But that didn't justify stealing someone else's. Karen also kept journals detailing her feelings about the loss, Lewis continued. In them, she repeatedly expresses anger toward the system and resentment toward parents who don't deserve their children. Over time, these emotions seem to have morphed into something darker, an obsession with reclaiming what she believes she's owed. He paused, flipping through a few pages of handwritten notes. There are entries where she talks about seeing other people's kids and feeling entitled to care for them. She even mentions fantasizing about taking a child she deems abandoned or neglected. It's clear she's been struggling with unresolved grief and guilt for a long time. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "So, she thought I didn't deserve Lily." Lewis hesitated before answering. "It seems that way, yes. Whether she truly believed it or used it as an excuse, we may never know. But based on what we've seen, she convinced herself that Lily belonged with her because of her resemblance to her own daughter, and because she saw an opportunity to fill the void left by her past losses." The revelation hit Sarah like a punch to the gut. She glanced over at Lily, who was curled up on the couch watching cartoons, blissfully unaware of the turmoil surrounding her. How could anyone look at her sweet, innocent face and think she deserved to be dragged into such madness? Detective Lewis leaned forward slightly, his tone shifting to one of reassurance. We're building a strong case against Karen, Ms. Thompson. Between her behavior today and the evidence we've gathered, it's unlikely she'll be able to argue her way out of this. But I won't lie. It might get messy before it's over. Sarah swallowed hard, nodding again. Messy was an understatement. The thought of facing Karen in court made her stomach churn. Would she have to relive every painful moment of that day? Would Lily be dragged into the legal battle too? And what if Karen somehow managed to twist the truth enough to confuse the judge or jury? I'll do whatever it takes, Sarah said, firmly, more to herself than to Lewis. I won't let her hurt my daughter again. Lewis offered a small, encouraging smile. You're stronger than you realize, Ms. Thompson, and you have a whole community supporting you. We'll make sure justice is served. As the detective left, Sarah sank onto the couch beside Lily, pulling her close once more. Her mind raced with thoughts of the days ahead, the DNA test, the hearings, the endless questions from reporters and curious neighbors. But amidst the uncertainty, one thing remained crystal clear. No matter what challenges lay ahead, she would fight tooth and nail to protect her family. That night, as Lily drifted off to sleep in her bed, Sarah stayed awake, watching over her like a guardian angel. Every breath her daughter took was a reminder of how close she'd come to losing her forever. And every shadow in the room seemed to echo Karen's voice, whispering cruel lies about who deserved to be called mother. But Sarah refused to let fear consume her. Instead, she focused on the future, the promise of brighter days, free from the specter of Karen Wilson. Tomorrow would bring its own battles, but for now she allowed herself a moment of peace, knowing that Lily was safe in her arms. That was all that mattered.